Mark Urban, well, to discuss this with us is the Times columnist Matthew Parris and Georgina Wright, Senior Brexit Researcher at the Institute of Government. Good evening to you both. Matthew Parris, she seems determinedly, maybe it's a negotiating tactic, determinedly again not to even countenance, even asking for an extension of Article 50. Is she going to have to?
I think that's absolutely meaningless. She's always determinedly against things until she's determinedly in favour of them. We don't know what she'll do, but she may have to. When people can't reach a decision, the natural thing is to postpone the decision.
But what is the advantage of being thrown about it now, setting her face against it now?
It sounds defeatist. It sounds as though she's not confident that she could get anything like her deal through in time. But if she needs to push things right to the very end, right to the up to the 29th, threatening people with no deal, then she will need more time. She might even get the deal through in a meaningful vote early on, perhaps in March. But then there's a whole lot of legislation, consequential legislation, that would have to go through to bring it about.
But presumably then, Georgina, the EU's attitude will depend on the kind of deal that she's putting forward. So, for example, if she suddenly comes up with a softer Brexit deal, will they be more minded to give her a hand rather than just blanketly saying you can have time?
It's very difficult to say. I think at the moment they're exploring all options. They have a wait-and-see approach. There's a process in place and that's not going to change. If there is to be an extension, the UK government has to ask for that extension. Whether or not they'd be willing to grant it, I think they would, but there would be conditions. One of them would be, is this worth it? Is it actually going to make a difference?
So there'd have to be a very specific plan, you think?
I think so. I mean, renegotiations, okay, but are the changes that you're going to bring to Brussels, are they feasible? Can they be delivered on? And the third question they're going to have is how much time? Because as we've heard just now, European Parliament elections are taking place in May, and that's, you know, a big important thing for the EU. But there are lots of other issues on their agenda.
Like what?
The refugee crisis, Eurozone reform, there are lots of general elections taking place in different member states. Those are at the top of their priority list, so they would need to calibrate that very carefully.
So, you know, Matthew Parris, when Gordon Brown says, you know, we want a year on this and we want people's assemblies to test the water around the country, this would not be the kind of thing that the EU would say, well, it's go ahead. Well,
it would be very, very difficult. A year, what would we do about the European elections? Would our MEPs continue to, well, we would have to go through the European elections in this country. Yeah. Where there's a will, there is sometimes a way. And I think the EU would probably grant us a year's extension if they were confident that at the end of that year we were going to reach a deal that suited them as well as suited us.
Rather than just kicking the can down the road.
Yes, but there's always an element of kicking the can down the road. But no, I think they would have to see their way. The EU would have to see their way, and the Conservative government would have to see its way to an agreed destination. Then I think where there was a will, there would be a way.
Do you agree with Matthew that actually if there is a deal, a new deal comes forward, without an extension, it wouldn't be possible to get it done?
I think realistically, even if the UK and the EU reached a new deal, they managed somehow in the next couple of weeks to tweak it, you'd still need time to adopt domestic legislation here in the UK to be able to adopt that agreement. So in any case, I think an extension becomes almost inevitable. The real question is, how much does the UK government want to change that agreement? And if it's substantial, then how much time will be needed? And if it is past July, then should we start thinking about electing British MEPs to the European Parliament? And how would that work?
Matthew, just turning to the predicament that Theresa May finds herself in. Let's say that she moves to something that might have all-party support, for example, obviously a customs union. Will the right of the party, the Brexit end of the party, wear this? Would this be catastrophic for the Conservatives?
No, they won't. They won't wear it. I don't know if it would be catastrophic, but they would have to be overruled. She would have to take the decision that she is going to look for consensus across the House.
So she'll take Labour Party support and ditch her ERG?
She would have to do that, and there would be fury amongst Tory Brexiteers, absolute fury.
Tell me, when you look ahead to Monday and you see that she's doing these different soundings and so forth, have you any sense, because it's very hard to get any sense, of whether there is actually any movement?
I have the sense that there is no movement at all at the moment. I'm not absolutely sure that movement is impossible. I don't think she's the person to achieve movement, and it's notable that she's appointed Michael Gove and David Lidington to do quite a bit of the negotiating. I don't think we've heard the last of Theresa May's deal. I've a feeling that it's going to come back in one form or another, and she's going to be hoping to peel off quite a few more MPs, and it might just be possible that there's this new plan by a cross-party group of MPs to bring in a little bit of legislation that would make the default option, if we reach the 29th of March without an agreement, the default option would not be no deal. The default option would be ask for an extension. Once the Brexiteers saw that, some of them might think again about Theresa May's deal.
Thank you both very much indeed.